Health and Safety webinar. My name's Nick Buller. I'm a implementation manager for Retail Risk Health and Safety. Before we start with the agenda, I'm just going to introduce you to your team that is in the room today.
Hi there, I'm Graham Watton. I'm the Retail Risk Manager for Food.
Thank you, Graham.
Hi, I'm Jackie McGrath. I'm the Implementation Manager for the Retail Health and Safety team.
Thank you, Jackie.
Hi, my name's Jean. I'm the Retail Resilience and Response Manager.
Okay, thank you very much, guys. Okay, the agenda that we're going to talk you through today is built up of an introduction and an overview, which we've just done. Graham is going to take us through a little bit on the strategy, why we've changed, the reason for that change, and how it's come about. He's going to talk about the retail health and safety overview and give you an overview of what the new world looks like. Jean Marie is going to take us through retail resilience and response, give us an explanation of what that's going to mean to you and how that hopefully is going to make your life so much easier out in the field, that when you need support, there'll be somebody there. Jackie is going to take you through the assessment, looks like, and an overview of that piece. And I will take you through what it means to you as an area manager and what your responsibilities are around your area manager role. And then we'll go into a question and answer session. We have got some pre-populated Q&As which have been submitted. Thank you very much for that. But I believe at the end of the webinar, there will be an opportunity for you to type any questions in and for you to submit, and we can also take those. At the end of the webinar, this will be available to view ad hocly as you should choose for yourself and maybe of your teams via YouTube. We will also be looking at publishing a podcast for anybody who has missed it, that they can play it in their car on the way either between stores or on the way home or to work. Okay, thank you very much for that. And I will now hand over to Graham, who will take us through his start of the agenda, the strategy and the why.
Great stuff, Nick. Thank you. Great opportunity to really launch the Retail Risk Health and Safety team over the next couple of months. There's a real need to work differently than we have done in the past. You know, for all the effort that we put into managing risk, health and safety as a business, you know, some of the clear stats are we still had 6,000 accidents in stores in the last 12 months. We still had 440 burglaries. We still had over 200 robberies. You know, we still have a challenge around cash loss, you know, managing loss in general. You know, we still paid out almost 10 million in claims. And these are really born out of the fact that we continue to do the same things that we'd always done. So we launched a bit of a review of our health and safety strategy, sort of late 2015, early 2016. And really it was a root and branch review. And it identified that, you know, with limited management system and governance structures, with a lack of clarity around roles and responsibilities. There's that grey area between what group risk did for us, what the responsibility and accountability was of first line, you know, as area managers, store managers and field managers. And then our reporting and measuring systems weren't in a great place either. And generally, we were very reactive, in a real reactive culture. And on the back of that, you know, we need to come up with a new way and adopt new ways of working to drive us forward and to become much more proactive in managing risk. So our vision for the future. Well, our vision for the future is quite simple. You know, we want to have the safest stores for our customers, our colleagues and our members. You know, it's safe, sustainable, engaged stores. And it needs to be, any change we have in any process we have is simple, meaningful and sustainable. And there is a very traditional view in looking at health and safety, food safety, diligence, crime. But actually our ability to land and manage change and also how we embed the operating model is as important to the future of the co-op as any of those individual risk disciplines. You know, so it's about creating the right culture. It's about giving the right support model. You know, we need to move proactively into identifying where we're weak, where the opportunities are, and move to coaching and upskilling rather than just assessing and reacting to incidents as they happen or poor performance. It's about simplicity for stores. It's about being proactive analysis. And I think one of the real things is it's about spreading our resource in the appropriate place. We've been guilty in the past of having very sort of linear structures of, you know, of risk managers with divisional risk partners, and they were the same in Scotland as they were in the south. and really that's not reflective of the levels of risk or the levels of challenge that we have in those areas. So the structure is very much around to provide the right support. As a business, and this is where it gets really boring, is when we start to talk about the governance structures that we have in place. And there's a little bit there about COSO. You'll hear people talk about COSO, but in a simple manner, COSO is a framework that when adopted, it means that we've got the right leadership message, the right capability, that we have the right process and governance in place to measure that we're achieving it. And by adopting these as a process, and adopting these as a standards, will support that corporate governance and our risk management in the co-op. There's also something about understanding the 3 lines of defence, and it can be quite difficult to explain that at times, but very, very simply, it's around us having clear accountability and ownership, in each area of the business. So ourselves as first line, working in food, we are responsible for the day-to-day operations of our stores through the processes. We're accountable to ensure that we've got the right people in position to execute that. The second line responsibility, so that group risk responsibility, is to provide oversight to the activities we have in first line and how we manage them, but also to have that slightly wider horizon scan view to feed back when there's changes in legislation or there's changes in trend and performance, to make sure that we're adjusting to that and putting the right strategy in place, the right investment in place to support. The third line of that defence strategy is around internal audit, and their role is to check that second line and first line are doing what they should do. And the structure, as we introduce it over the next couple of minutes, we'll be able to demonstrate how that fits in. We've included in the slide deck a little bit of a view on the capability framework. I don't want to go into it too in depth just now, but essentially what it introduces a framework called Plan, Do, Check, Act. And Plan, Do, Check, Act is a recognised health and safety management structure. The plan is very much around understanding what are the needs of the business, challenges we face, and what strategy we're going to adopt to address them. The do, then this very much falls into how we execute, is when we've decided on the plan and we've got the agreement of the food exec and the senior leadership of the business, it's how we turn that activity and execute it at store level. The check is where we, and that goes for ourselves and assessment team or our field team or yourselves as field managers, do the check to ensure that we're embedding those changes or embedding those processes. And it's also how we analyse, the data that's coming in on the back of incidents or on the back of assessments to understand where the opportunities lie that we then feed into the act, which is where we learn from all that in a continuous improvement cycle. And then that just starts to repeat itself again by going into the plan side. So moving on to our risk, health and safety structure. The structure is significantly smaller than the structure you would have been used to with group risk, but they're all very much part of first line. And we've built the structure very, very differently. We're dynamically looking at our risk profile. We're understanding where incidents happen and where risk events occur. We're also trying to understand and have understood the complexity of one store versus another store. And through that, we've identified, based on all the activity that we want to complete over the next 12 months, how many people we need in an area, how many stores they've got capability of looking after. And the model we've built is not dissimilar to some of the labour models that you see when we talk about task-based. We know how many assessments we want to do. We know how many times we're going to have to react to an AHO based on the last 5 years history. We know how many incidents that area is likely to have. And that allows us to ensure that we've got the right capacity. It's why in the north of Scotland, our field risk support officer has 130 stores, whereas in some of the south areas, there's 1 to 77 stores. Because we recognise that level of support, that coaching, upskilling, investigation is required at different levels. And that's why the structure looks slightly different. To give it in a sort of simple way, there's sort of 4 key lines. The first line to it is our response. And that's a new team that we've introduced. And Jane's here, she's going to talk about that just in a second, about the roles and accountabilities there. The second line of that structure is around our subject matter experts. And that's headed up by Neil Meera. Neil's joined us from the group risk team. And his role with his guys are to look at what are the legislative compliance? What are the legislative areas we need to achieve? Their key interfaces are with FM, they're with licensing, they're with health and safety, they're with property, and their role is to ensure that from a subject matter expert, we've got the right support in place for our stores. And their role is also to advise us when legislation is changing. That's when it falls into my team. My team's made up of Nick and Jackie, who are on the call with us today as implementation managers. Their role is to take that guidance from the SME team and turn it into activity that's executable at store level. They're there to bring together learning and design. They're there to bring external suppliers together. They're there to bring the comms together to actually make it simple for you and your store teams to execute in the field. And then in that team, we've got some analyst support. So our role with the analysts is to understand all the data that comes in and to build that into that model around capability, and compliance and execution. So we really get a real understanding of our stores, particularly in how we sort of achieve the operating model or how we achieve legislative compliance. Also within that structure, there's a little bit of admin support for the team in there as well. And then the last role within that is our quality assurance role. And that role is about keeping us honest. That's the guardian of the risk register for us. Every activity we do in stores is governed by the risk register. It's a control towards managing risk. And the quality assurance role is there to make sure that the activities we do meet that and we maintain what we've committed to on the risk register. And then that takes us across to the 2 field roles. We've got 2 senior field roles out there. Currently, we're going through a recruitment process for them. We hope to announce them just shortly. But underneath them, we have got 24 field support managers. And they're based from the north to south, so from Scotland right the way to the south. And we've practically completed recruitment for them, and they'll be starting with us sort of through February. We've brought across people from the former field risk team, and what that's allowing us to do is have those dozen people who've got those great traditional skills around risk management, around health and safety management, food diligence, crime, licensing, etc. They're there to support also about a dozen people that we brought out of the field and out of the centre who've got that operational execution experience, who understand our operating model, our store model, and that's going to give us a great blend of traditional skills and new skills around the execution and operating model in the field, so how stores run. Between them, we're looking to create that function that supports, coaches on skills as much as providing advice. And that's it for me, so I'm going to pass on.
Thanks for that, Graham. So that's a real bit of evidence to support why we needed to change. Hopefully you can see that the stats that Graham gave you, that it was a real good reason for that change and how we're getting onto our new process. Good overview of the team and what the team looks like. You'll notice Graham did mention the new part of the team, and it's something that's new to the field team of support, was the retail resilience and response team. So I'm going to hand over to Jean Marie Hughes, who is the manager of this team.
Thanks, Nick. Again, great opportunity to speak to you all today around this brand new team. It is a brand new role. We're a team of 4. We have obviously myself, one resilience manager, and 3 resilience and response officers, who are Ryan, Rose, and Emily. What the team is in place to do is to respond to all major incidents that may happen at any time of day. So the team are on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Any incident that comes in at any point, either through an FM alert or through a risk, the team will pick that up, triage in each incident, and contact the store based on the incident and response. During that triage, how we will triage that is based on colleague impact. So if there is a physical assault or an armed robbery, obviously our main priority will be to ensure the colleagues are fine. So you will receive a phone call immediately to ensure that everyone is okay in store. Following that, as part of the hypercare part of the role, the team will, as I've already described, assess the incident on an individual basis and keep in touch with the store until we are happy that the incident has been resolved. In instances such as fires and closures, the team will work with all the functions within the retail support centre to try and make things as simple as possible for you guys in the field and for obviously stores. So we'll help coordinate unusual activities that you would normally have to do all of a call with OSS with, such as my comms are down, I need to log a call, and then I need to log a call with IT and logistics to try and prevent any further impact. Our team will absolutely filter any other work that you would normally do, anything that can be brought in-house, we will bring in-house. As part of that function as well, we will continuously analyse data and review each instance on its own merit. What that allows us to do, similarly to what Graham described, is it allows us to spot trends and then also understand what is the cause of the impact to help other teams put in place any processes or routines to try and prevent these incidents happening. This is also as well to enable the business to make informed decisions to support continuous improvements in stores and with other policies and processes. On to the next slide, you'll be able to see a part of what our team's function is also to understand what the cost of each impact is. So obviously our priority is to ensure the colleagues are okay and that obviously the store trades and you guys have the support you need. But as with anything, there isn't cost applied and impact applied. As you can see from the second slide, this is a week's worth of costs for a number of incidents that happened in stores. Our team will be able to pull out that data and understand where we need to put them improvements in. So whether that's a process and a policy is actually being embedded in stores and how we simplify that for you guys, or whether or not we're not reacting quick enough or responding quick enough to be able to get back up trading. Our team will be able to pull all that data together and put action in place, whereas in the past we've not really had an owner on that, whereas our team will now own that, be able to collect that and be able to give visibility of what we need to do to improve the business for both any losses that may occur from processes, but any losses that may occur from us not responding quick enough to you guys. What we'll also be doing is understanding what gets in the way. So a good example of that is till cassettes and till drawers. So usually after a till snatch, it can take up to 5 weeks to receive a till drawer. So our team are in place to understand how we speed that up without a cost applied to the store or to the business. And I'm glad to say that we've already started putting some of those processes in place. Also, in that instance, a store will be asked usually to log it on an e-form to do an order. We will do that directly for you going forward. So it will be a bit of a learning curve because we're a brand new team around how we continue to do that. But it's definitely a team in place that will help understand and analyse how we do improve things for you guys.
Thanks, Jean-Marie. I know I've had some feedback about your team in place, and like you say, it is a new team, but the feedback from what I've heard is absolutely fantastic. I think it's a really big step change for the business to have that one point of contact when you need support. So hopefully going forward, that I'm sure it will be a massive win to us as a business. Okay, I'm going to hand over to Jackie McGrath. He's going to talk about us, give us an overview of the retail risk health and safety assessment. Over to you, Jackie.
That was a bit of a voicemail, but thank you. Welcome everybody. Just to give you an overview of why we're changing and what those changes will mean for stores. So previous audits have only covered health and safety processes. The new assessment will cover the whole store operation. So whilst it will still cover health and safety processes, it will also cover things like cash and leakage, security membership, and operating model tasks. It will help us to understand how process lands in store and how difficult it is for stores to execute process and why it lands better in some stores than it does in others. The assessment currently contains 239 questions and it will cover all aspects of our business, but none of our stores will be asked them all. The majority of the estate will be asked around 160 questions, so it's only slightly more than in previous years. All stores will be assessed in 2018 and the assessments will start on the 4th of Feb. The field and support officers will complete the assessments and there'll be a lot more coaching and support for store teams to help them to get in a better place after they've been assessed. And now, as we own the assessment, we'll be able to review the questions periodically and change them to the needs of our business. So, what will an assessment day look like? So a field support officer will sign in as normal and they'll ask to see the duty manager. They do have access to Tara system, so they will know who's scheduled for work that day But we all know things happen, managers don't turn up, they get sick. I really know who's going to be there when they turn up. They will have a list of documents that we'll need to see as evidence of processes on the day. So they'll hand that to the duty manager for them to collect that information for inspection for later on. The visits aren't just about gathering evidence, it's also about discussions with colleagues and the duty manager so they can gauge how well processes landed across all tiers. If after the assessment there are critical failures, they'll be discussed on the day with the duty manager and they'll start to put what's wrong right. After the assessment is submitted, a report will go to the store with a list of failures in a priority order, and that will also produce a blank action plan. The store managers to put some thought into how they're going to address the actions. The field support officers will then contact the store manager within 48 hours to discuss the full assessment, any failed questions and any action plans proposed by the store manager, and that will help them to assess any support that will be needed to put right the issues. The area manager will then be required to confirm the completion of critical actions going forward.
Okay, thanks, Jackie. So what will this mean for the role of the area manager? What will change and what will this look like? The area manager, after the assessment, on the day of the assessment, you will get a call and it will give you an overview of the critical failures. This will happen immediately once the assessment is complete. So your risk officer will call you and say what's failed in this store, what those critical failures are. You'll get feedback around the whole assessment, as Jackie has just alluded to, within 48 hours, and that will be a detailed breakdown of an action plan of what has been failed in store and what actions are needed to be remedied. This will include criticals, which will be at the top of the list, obviously as a priority, but it will also give you a list of every other failure. The reason we've said about failures is just really it gives you a clear expectation and vision of what is to be to reduce the risk in that individual store. On the action template, it will be included with feedback provided to the store manager. Now, the store manager is responsible for this action plan. He should own this action plan. He should be working with his team to deliver it and remedy any of the actions and failures that have been done to how to reduce that risk in store, whatever that may be. The area manager is accountable for the completion of this. So the area manager is there for the guidance, for the coaching, to find out if he needs any support, if the store manager needs any support, what that will look like. And what we expect on the back is continual discussion on visits, individual calls with store manager to ask for updates on the assessment, how we're looking, have we completed it, is there any support that's needed. Key difference for the area manager is, as we've said, that he will be accountable for the output of that assessment. And again, it is up to them to coach and guide store managers around effective risk, health and safety management and maintaining that store operating model. Signing off the assessment, on the day of the assessment, as we said, you'll get a review of the critical failures that will be reported back to the duty manager as well at the store. This will happen immediately, so you should be well aware of it. As area managers, you should confirm the completion of critical failures to the new Retail Risk Health and Safety inbox, which is replacing the Safe and Secure inbox. Remaining actions from assessment of the area manager to own, and this again should be done through visits, through coaching and guidance. But the key is for those critical failures, just as you have done previously, you need to confirm back to the inbox that these have been completed successfully in store and that they are being maintained in store. Quite a few people have asked about consequence framework, and I think we took some learnings back previously of maybe what we could have done better. So we've looked at this, and what we've come up with is that we think critical failures are non-negotiable in terms of potential consequence, which is nothing new. That has been since the criticals were implemented and brought into the business. It's the accountability of the area manager to ensure that all shortfalls have a plan to rectify. Regular reporting will be produced on this to establish whether investigations are being completed and actioned. Again, there will be regular reporting on the critical failures weekly from the Retail Risk Health and Safety email address. The consequence management for the assessment fails will fall under the Co-op's overarching disciplinary framework. So there is no specific guidance for failures of the assessment. However, we do have a disciplinary framework which will support any consequences that come out of the assessment. Okay, just moving on to, and Graham touched on this, so I'm not going to go through it in depth, but it will be there after the webinar for reference for yourselves, is the 3 lines of defence. Accountability or responsibility. So put quite simply, responsibility can be shared, delegated, while accountability cannot. Being accountable means that you are ultimately answerable for your actions. And just to make that simple for you, store teams are responsible for the day-to-day management of risks through execution of the process and controls at store level. Store managers are accountable for the day-to-day management of risk through their store teams. Are accountable for the day-to-day management of risks by their stores. What does this mean in practice for the area manager? It means ensuring capability of the store management you have in your stores, providing leadership to drive business performance, coaching for peak performance, checking activities and processes are being followed and delivered, and that action plans address shortfalls that are being completed. And a big part of this behaviour is escalating new and emerging risks to the business. There is a graph there of the 3 lines of defence, which Graham alluded to earlier, so I'm not going to talk to you that. However, it is there as a reference material. Okay, the next part of the webinar is a Q&A session. So I think the best way for us to do this is we've got the pre-submitted questions. We'll read each question and we will delegate to one of our team just to come up with the answer and to give you a little bit of understanding around those questions. Okay. Question. Will we still be following up the assessment with investigations and disciplinaries? Jackie, can you pick this up?
So, yeah, where critical issues are raised, we are still expecting you to investigate those. You should complete a full investigation, take appropriate action. All investigations should be logged with ERCC. Disciplinary actions will fall under the overarching court disciplinary framework, as Nick's just alluded to.
Thank you, Jackie.
I've got one that's coming on YouTube. I'll give this one to you, Nick, and then you can find out who can answer it best. It's from Mike Pangeli, and he said, can critical fail audits be sent to regional managers too? I don't need them, but it would be good to know the criticals.
Yeah, that's a really good question, Mike. I'll probably pass that over to Graham if that's okay.
Hi, Mike. Great question. Yeah, so the reporting, and there's different levels of reporting for different parts of the business, isn't there? So from a store level, they absolutely need to know what the standards are that haven't been met. They need to know where the critical failures are and how to remediate, and that's part of that action plan for the individual stores. There's also that need for the area managers there to manage the capability and performance, so they need to be clear and get a similar report there. As we step it up a level, Mike, and this is where we start to look at individual questions that are coming out of the assessment, critical failures, absolutely we need to share what they are and where they are. But when it comes to the other areas, what we're looking at this assessment is how do we badge that up? Because actually what we want to look at as a business is and understand areas where we're weak. So how we're performing in the operating model, but actually is it leadership? Is it execution? Is it compliance? And the reporting that we build as we increase through the levels of management in the business, it's much more around the behaviours rather than the individual compliance for each question by store. So that will be available. But what we want to create is a heat map of where the opportunities are. And you'll see that over the first quarter. Because what we're aiming to do and what our intent is that at the end of, although we'll get regular reporting throughout, we will get aggregated reporting, which will help us understand trend, performance, but also opportunity. And create that, so to brief out to field teams, area teams, but also equally important, look at the RSC and what we're asking you to do to execute in the field as well.
Cool. And for clarity, Mike wanted to just say that he only wanted the critical failures sent into him, not to everyone, meaning just regional managers.
Yeah.
He's also asked another question, which is how often will you centrally pull the data for risks? Example, out-of-hours cigarette robberies are a huge drain on cost, resource and time. Will this be recognised at as a risk for 2018?
Great question, Mike. As part of our new response team, I'm going to hand that off to Jean-Marie.
Hi, Mike. Hope you're well. Absolutely, we will be pulling the data, and we will be pulling it regularly. So we're currently now even 3 weeks in, starting to get an understanding of what those break-ins overnight actually look like, and obviously trending up what is the issue. So is the issue the fact that the stores haven't locked the gantry? Is the issue the fact that our gantries aren't fit for purpose, or is it the fact that actually the stores haven't locked the front door? There's loads of number of issues, and that we are currently trying to trend and create. As I said earlier on in my presentation, is we will continue to do that on a weekly basis, and we'll start building cases, as in what next steps that looks like, but also for the business if there is any equipment or support needed.
Just to add on to that, I think we have been handcuffed over the last couple of years around available capital to do betterment works, where we've identified trend. And I can think, particularly Mike, in your area in South Wales, there's been some, an increase in burglaries, and we've struggled to come up with the capital to support and do some remediation works. What we have got this year, and it'll be managed through Andy Needham's team in the loss and costs, is there is a small amount of capital available to do works in a targeted manner. And through Jean's analysis and analysis from the Risk Health and Safety team as well, be able to identify those opportunities, and Andy will be building the business case for that investment.
Sorry, just to add on as well, we will also be looking at, in each instant where tobacco or any impact affects the stores, how we can simplify the process for stores following that incident. So, for example, we will be following any incident going forward, sending out what the current process is, but we'll be working with the teams as well, that if there is a cigarette robbery, for example, and take an entire gantry, is how we can get those cigarettes into you quicker, but also how can we possibly speed up the process on how we claim, etc. So it is a continuous cycle, and we'll continue to work with the teams and stores to fix it.
Thanks, Jean-Marie. Graham. Quick question is, will my stores get a copy of the questions for the operational assessment? The quick answer to that is yes, they will be available shortly on How Do I. The guidance won't necessarily be on there, but stores should know the operating model. If not, all the reference fields are on How Do I, as you will have seen in the last few months. Okay, next question. Can I have a go at doing the operational assessment? I'm going to hand this over to Graham.
Absolutely. Do you know what? I think there's a thing that we have to think about here and face into, and this goes back to the, our change event that we had recently, where we talked less about the how and the what, and we started to talk about the why we do things. We have never looked in such granular detail at the operating model and how we operate. We have a huge risk register, and those risk registers have lots of control measures on them, and those control measures all link back to processes at store. And ultimately, if we execute those processes correctly at store, we will manage our risk and our risk profile as a business. The way that we operate those processes is through our operating model. If we understand how that's landed, if we can differentiate between it being complex to being a simple process, we can make a real difference to our risk profile as a business and make us, be more profitable as a business, sustainable, managed, meaningful, ongoing. The assessment is 220 odd questions, and if we look at it the wrong way, stores and operations teams could view this as the biggest stick we've ever given to beat people with. But actually, we need to flip that thought, and we need to think about it as it's an opportunity to understand our stores as much as it is a feedback mechanism to tell the centre, the RSC, and all the various functions that support the stores if they're doing a good job or are they making it complicated. There's nothing in this operational assessment that isn't a standard process, isn't a process. We're not asking everybody to do any more. So what I would encourage is for yourselves to get out with our field risk support officers. In fact, they're going to be contacting all their area managers and the regional managers over the next few weeks and offering up that opportunity to spend a day in store to work through that assessment with them, whether it's late nights, whether it's weekends, whether it's early mornings. Find a way of doing it conveniently. We want to assess how we trade and how we operate 24/7, 365 days a year. They want to work through it, they work through it, and I think they're going to look to, and we've suggested they maybe pick up with you around the stores of excellence and going into those stores, because they really are our champions of change in the business. And again, that links into the message there about how we land and sustain change. So yeah, get out there, have a go with the field risk support officers. We'd appreciate any feedback on how you found it when you're out there. Sorry, thank you.
Thanks, Graham. Okay, and my permanent FRSO is a vacancy currently. Should I expect to see an assessment being done on, from the 4th of February? The answer to this is by the 12th of February, we should have the majority of our field team in place. However, they will need upskilling. We will have 3 vacancies, which we are currently interviewing for at the moment. We should have those in place in the next 2 to 3 months. When the new guys are being upskilled, they will be doing assessments and budging up with some of the colleagues that are already in position. And some of these could very well be on your area. And we will be looking at doing them across the country to pick up, as Graham alluded to, stores of excellence, and just to give us as wide a breadth of experience of store estate and what's happening in those stores as possible. So the answer to that is yes. Okay, will there be follow-up visits? Jackie?
Yes, we will be doing a sample check of follow-up visits between 3 and 6 months after the initial assessments, which will literally to be just to cover off certainly all the criticals, where they're up to with their action plans, and again, you know, what help and support do they need, what have they done for themselves, whether there's anything that we need to do as a team to make that alive again, really, for store and get that tick in the box.
Thanks, Jackie. What part am I expected to play in the follow-up to these assessments? Graham?
Yeah, I'll take this one. Thanks, Nick. This goes back to the 3 lines of defence model. You know, we were quite clear there that store teams are responsible for the execution of day-to-day process and policies to achieve the required standard for our business. Very technical answer, that. But, you know, that's what they're responsible for. Store managers are accountable for that. And that execution in their stores. Have they got the right people in place? Are they scheduled at the right time? Do they have the right training and upskilling? That's the, you know, the accountability of the store manager. As an area manager, you know, the accountability is quite clear. Have you got the right people in the right place? Your role is check the checker, and that's what we'll be looking for you to do. So it's about building that action plan. You know, we can coach, we can upskill, we can come back later, do some more upskilling. That's all part of the package. But actually, as an area manager, we're looking for you to support and own that action plan along with the store manager, and also to use it as a tool throughout the store visits. We will come back in at a later date to have a look and see where we can support and upskill. We are on the phone and in support coming into store to help you. You know, from a reporting perspective, we're going to report on the criticals. You know, the critical failures. That's where we're going to focus on reporting from a diligence perspective. When it comes to standards not met around the rest of the assessment, that's very much in the area manager, the store manager's gift to monitor. And so that's the accountability there.
Thanks, Graham. So next question is, how are stores being selected? Firstly, every store will get an assessment during the course of the year. Start off in Q1, obviously we are a little bit behind pace as we're starting on the 4th of February. We supplied each risk officer with a list of 40 stores to select from. These will include stores of excellence and stores with as wide a possible offering as we can have, and to try and cover all different aspects of the estate. We're also looking at higher risk complex stores. There's been a big piece of work with Andy, one of our analysts working in the background. We perceive high risk stores as basically a risk rating on crime and incidents in the area. We've looked a lot more in depth at this. We've looked at engagement scores, we've looked at even to the detail of how often stores read the daily bulletin and weekly bulletin. We've looked at if they've got lifts, we've looked at if they've got a butchery. So we've valued stores on the risk, our own risk rating, to include all these, to give them the high complexity stores and obviously scoring on those. So those stores we'll be looking at. It is a really, really interesting database, which I'm sure when we've finalised it 100%, it will be shared and used for various reasons. But that's how the stores will be being selected.
Yeah, just to add to that, this is about understanding complexity and capability. And using a mix of the data and the assessments, we'll be able to understand our stores better. You know, are they complex to run? Do we need to be more supportive of them, or does it come down to capability and execution at store level? And that's what this assessment is designed to give us as a view.
Thanks, Graham. Okay, question. How will the response team investigate incidents thoroughly if they're based in Angels Work? Jean-Marie?
Yeah, so we have access to a number of different databases or systems, should I say, that allow us to complete investigations in full after we've asked questions. We're also able to request CCTV on the back of any incident that occurs. And obviously there's a load of questions that we already have applied into a Canvas app that we'll be asking over the phone to be able to understand what the issue or how the incident occurred, etc. If at any point we believe the incident we're not getting the answers we need, we follow up with the store until we are happy and the store are happy that the investigation is complete.
Thanks, Jean-Marie. Looks like you're popular. It might be another one for you here. What does 24/7 on call look like? Do I ring them direct? Is there a number that I can contact them with? How do I get in touch?
Okay, so there is a number. 24/7 is exactly as it sounds. So the team will be on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to support with incidents at store. They will be contactable in hours. However, if an armed robbery, burglary happens, then you should follow the normal process, which is to have a call with the facilities help desk, who will then contact whoever is on call that week. And then the person who is on call will call the store directly following that phone call from the knock.
Yeah, makes sense. Thank you. Question: are the results of the assessments being analysed centrally to spot trends?
Yeah, the answer is yeah, I touched on it a little bit earlier on. This is as much about us understanding the operating model from a retail sports centre perspective as it is how we execute it in the field. So yeah, all the information's coming back. We have 220 plus questions just now. Our intent is to assess as many stores as we can get through. We're looking to do sort of 1,000 stores over the next 8-9 months or so. And that's going to give us great information. We're also going to tweak the assessment as we go through. As we learn, what's important to the business, what areas we've got opportunity in, what areas are fine. We'll be able to upscale and reduce some of the question sets. But yes, we're taking it back. We're doing the analysis, providing insight to the RSC and challenging them to work differently. If you do 1,000 stores and 50 or 80 of the stores aren't doing a process, I'm going to argue with you now that is execution at store level. However, if we come back and we've got 400 stores who can't deliver a process, that's a problem for us in the support centre. That's a complicated process, the wrong process. We've got to find a better way of doing it, whether that's through finding new and innovative ways of doing it or challenging it through leading the way to come up with a better solution for the future. That's our role, that's our commitment, and we're going to take that, share that, and challenge the business.
Thanks, Graham. What does accountability mean to me as an AM? Probably discussed this earlier, if I'm honest with you. The area manager is accountable to ensure the stores are compliant both legally and process-wise in the day-to-day operation. The store manager is responsible to ensure that the day-to-day operation is managed correctly and to the store's operating model and legalities. I think it was covered in the previous slides. Okay, where can I find out more about the disciplinary framework? Jackie, you okay?
Yes, so the disciplinary framework is an HR-owned framework, and there is supporting documentation on the food HR pages. You can always discuss on a one-to-one basis with your HR manager or business partner, and if you need more detail then to discuss any actions, then you've always got employee relations to depend on. Thanks,
Jackie. Question: How is this going to change my relationship with my old area risk manager? The area risk manager role no longer exists, and the scope of the risk field support officer is different. There will still be the day-to-day contact, obviously visiting your stores and giving you feedback and observations on what they've seen in stores as well as the assessments. They will be there to support you if needed. If anything, the relationship should be building is stronger as the field support officers now work for food, which is a real big win for us rather than working for group risk. So they should have the same focus and goals for you. What I will say is that they will not be there to do actions and tasks for you. They will be there to support, guide, engage and coach you through what tasks you may need to do with your team and to help give you a better understanding of your role with regard to retail risk. Okay, question: what support will I get with investigations? Jackie?
Okay, so in the first instance, area managers are accountable for any investigations. However, we do have a range of subject matter experts that will support you with any higher level investigations, which will be assessed individually. So if any of you have got concerns around that, you should get in touch with the response team, and they will then send out the appropriate email to whoever it might be aimed at, whether it be a pest issue or a cash issue. They will redirect that email and you will get support from the right person.
Thanks, Jackie. Question, what support will I get with trading standards officers, EHOs, etc.? The field retail risk officers will support you in building relationships with external bodies like environmental health or trading standards officers. They'll be more than happy to liaise with you and support you if it is needed. But it will be absolutely working together to make the right desired outcome for whatever that incident may be. So it is a real clear thing about us working together as a team to deliver the right outcome. Question, when will the full retail risk health and safety team be in place? Graham?
Do you know, I think we're practically there. You know, we've got a great blend of skills. We touched on it earlier on. Great blend of skills, traditional health and safety professionals. You know, there's some very well qualified, very experienced bodies in there around health and safety, around diligence, around crime, and they are going to help us build a great team of support out there. And we've also got some people coming out the centre. We've got some people out of store. These are guys that are all high calibre. They're all graded as exceeding, in their full years. These are people who really want to make a difference. And when we blend the two together, I think we're going to create a great team that's going to be there to support and upskill. And, what we have got, though, is the next 3 months is a period of transition. We've got new people in role. We've got people that are in role that haven't necessarily looked at some of these subjects before. So there's going to be a learning curve for everyone. And I'd appreciate your support with that, but also allow them to really get to know you and where they can support you. So I would say that we'll be, we're going to be up and running from February, but also, we're up and running now, but we're going to have more in the field in February, and then sort of into March and into April, and we're fully up and running and live with all vacancies filled.
Great, thanks, Graham. Okay, question. Will the retail risk health and safety officers be attending my meetings regularly? Jackie, are you okay to pick that up?
Yeah, that's fine. Yes, they will be attending some of your meetings, but it's as and when it's appropriate to. So if there's anything that's in Team TAR with race, then yes, they can deliver that for you. But that will be as and when it happens. So not all the time, but yes, they will still attend at some times.
Thanks, Jackie. Question, will I get the same level of post-incident support from my FRSO? Probably your first point of contact for that, Jean Marie, do you want to say that?
Yeah, so obviously the response team's being put in place to be that first line. So when an incident does occur, we are dealing with it and triaging it. The only time a risk officer will be involved is if we ask them to attend, and that'll be based on severe traumatic incidents whereby the store may need further support. We are here, the response team are here to support and do that piece of work, and obviously we will continue to do that, regardless of a risk officer going in or not.
Thanks, Jean Marie. Okay, question, why has the amount of field roles been reduced? I think Graham did touch on this a little bit earlier, but if you just want to give us just a quick overview of that, Graham.
Yeah, just very, very briefly, I think we've got, it's the same challenge that you hear right across the business. This isn't around just removing roles for the sake of roles. It's working differently. It's removing tasks. It's changing the way we work, but it's also adopting more modern processes and practices. We're a huge business and create a huge amount of data. A lot of the investigations that we've had and a lot of the risk events that have happened, when I've done root cause analysis on them, they've demonstrated that we could have spotted that these risk events were going to happen had we reacted to the individual data that, data sets that were coming through. So actually what we've built is quite a comprehensive database which we start to look at this data, try to learn what the patterns are and what the trends are, and through that analysis it's demonstrated that there is a more proactive way to work. When we combine that with the tasks that we're asking people to do, the value add tasks, then that's allowed us to understand the numbers we need. And that's why we've reduced the numbers, but we're also going to be providing a better quality. I won't lie, there's a stretch there, there's a stretch for everyone, but it's going to be a good stretch.
Thanks, Graham. Question, are they unannounced? What if the store manager isn't on site? I think I'll say this one. Yes, they will be unannounced as previous, so that's nothing new. But this time we won't necessarily be making sure that there's a store manager in position. And some of the assessments will be taking place at weekends and evenings. as a business, we should be operating consistently, irrelevant of what time of the day it is, or if it's weekend, or if it's a weekday. So we're really looking at trying to see, is there a difference in our operating system and what our customer offer is at different times of the day, different days of the week. So absolutely, there will be at different times of the week. The risk officer team have got our passwords, and they will be checking to see if there's a store manager or a tier 2 on site for that visit. But as said, it is not about doing it when the store manager's in. We want a true reflection of what's on offer from our business estate. Scale to complete actions. I'll take this one. So this is operational actions. And the timescales, nothing's really changed, if I'm honest with you. As previous, the critical actions are non-negotiable. They should be completed as quickly as possible, and ensuring that things are put in place to make sure that that improvement is maintained throughout that store. We will be expecting those to be signed off within 8 weeks at the absolute latest, but if I'm honest with you, they should be signed off on the day that they happen, and remedies put in place, but sustainable remedies. So not just a tick the box. Let's make sure that the culture in that store understands why these criticals have happened, what the consequences are for those criticals, what could happen to us as a business, and how important it is to maintain that. That question is that critical question. The non-critical questions, we as a retail risk, health and safety team will not be chasing up, but the expectation is that as an accountable area manager for that store, you will be checking that those actions have been closed down, fixed and sustainably in place within 8 weeks of the assessment being received. Okay, what actions will I see as an AM? Jackie, do you want to pick this one up?
Okay, I'm guessing this is from an assessment. So basically you will see whatever a store sees. So as soon as the submit button is pressed for an assessment, the store and yourselves will get the report. The report will consist of any critical actions and any critical failures, and then any other failures that the assessment has brought out. Get an action plan, a blank action plan that they will actually be able to populate themselves. So on that action plan, we're expecting it to be smart, we're expecting it to have an owner, and we're expecting it to be followed through. And we're also expecting you to use that when you're in store to really embed that level of change, whatever it may be. So you can use that for your own purpose then. That will obviously inform you of whether the action has been signed off or not. And then if it's critical, that's how you will then send an email into us, and then we can actually close that action down.
Excellent, thanks Jackie. What happens to critical failures? There's no change in this process, if I'm honest with you. Failures should be investigated. A further action is required. They should be taken following the overarching co-op disciplinary process. One thing I would suggest is make sure that you always discuss with ER. Colleagues should be retrained urgently to ensure that critical risk is removed. So it's about, again, the understanding of why, what the consequences could be for not following that critical question and that guidance, and why as a business and individual colleagues need to deliver that and make sure that we are operating safely. Okay, will there be reports to DMDs, RMs, etc.? Graham, do you want to pick this one up?
Yeah, touched on this earlier on, the right reporting for the right person. You know, it's individual detail for stores and area managers, rolling up into overall performance for an area, rolling up into performance for a region, to give themes, to give specifics and so opportunities for coaching and upskilling, right the way up to DMDs. At the DMDs, it's less about the individual answers and more about those themes around, is it leadership, is it capability, is it compliance, that we produce. And that's for all areas of the business, both into the RSC and out into store.
Thanks, Graham. But why I've got you, there's probably another one that links into that. So the next question is, what support can I expect from my risk support officer to help me with the actions? You were talking about the engaging, the coaching, etc.
Yeah, and that's going to be there. So once we've completed an assessment, we've done that feedback, we will be looking to, you know, the opportunities there for a field risk support officers to go back a few weeks later to do a few hours coaching, upskilling in specific areas, and they'll agree that on a case-by-case basis. there's also the opportunity to seek clarity at any time. That call 48 hours later with the store manager doesn't necessarily have to just be the store manager. If an area manager wants to join that call as well, absolutely we will extend that invite.
Thank you. Can I have a list of questions and guidance for my stores to follow? Jackie, probably appropriate you answer this.
Yes, so in recent years, we have asked stores to do a self-assessment. There won't be any need to do a self-assessment. So I'm mindful that there's no capacity in there for stores to complete a full assessment on their store. So we will have a question list, set of questions that will be on how do I, once they've had final sign-off, we're still going through that process. But again, there is no requirement. So the guidance, what the field support officer is looking for won't be on there, because there is nothing hidden within this. It's a very open process, and whatever process should be done for that assessed will be on how do I anyway. So if they put the question in how do I, it will come up with a list of things that they should be doing to get that task correct.
Thanks, Jackie. Just the last 2 or 3 questions coming up. This next one I will take. What happens if the risk supporter officer turns up and the store are having a crisis, be it a robbery, a burglary, or a ram raid? If I'm honest with you, that's a decision that will need to be made locally on the day. So the decision will be made locally on the day, and as to whether the assessment will go ahead. Obviously, serving our customers and getting the stores fit for purpose will be take priority over us completing an assessment. A couple of questions coming now. What happens if a risk support officer turns up at the store and the store's having a stock take? Again, very simply, the officers have got a copy of the stock take schedule, so this shouldn't happen. What I would call out as a request from yourselves would be that if you make any local changes to that schedule, can you please involve or please at least inform your risk officer so he's aware of that change. If it did happen, the stock take would always take priority. Okay, what will the impacts on a store be? Timeout, supports on the store manager, tier 2, etc. during the assessment. Jackie, do you want to pick this one up?
Yes, so really there should be very little impact to the store. So the store manager will be given, or the duty manager will be given a list of the documents that will be needed to provide evidence to support the question. That's normally sort of like the last 4 or the previous 4 weeks that they'll need to answer that. There will be within this some discussion pieces, because what we're trying to get out of it is really engage the team and really look at process and see how that has been embedded with that team, not just that a manager knows what he's doing day in day, because it's not just about the manager, it's about every colleague in that store. So there will be some discussion points with colleagues, and based on the testing that we've done, we've been testing around 5 or 6 minutes for those colleague discussions, and then likewise for management discussions. So that's as much as their impact there will be. There will actually be a summary at the end of it, just to talk about the criticals. And like we said earlier, there'll be a 48-hour timescale, if you like, so that each section can actually go off and think about how they can get around those actions and build those action plans that are going to be robust and sustainable for the future. And then there will be that conversation. So there might be an hour out, 48 hours later. There'll be a quick overview, and there might be 5 or 6 minutes for a discussion piece throughout the assessment.
Thanks, Jackie. So pretty minimal, really, to be fair.
Yeah.
That's really good. Last question that we've had submitted. What takes priority, a robbery, a burglary, or an assessment? I suppose really with what Jean Marie's team we've discussed with the response team, that will make that decision. So it will be decided on the triage by Jean Marie's team if one of the risk officers needs to attend a burglary or a robbery, albeit to be fair, burglaries now we are trying to ease away from, because we think the majority of the issues for that will be for FM. But after that triage, obviously, if we need to contact a risk officer, we will do. However, again, there will be no effect whatsoever on a store that is due an assessment, as stores should not know that they are due an assessment. And that's it for the questions and answers.
Fantastic.